Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about the other Thor from classic Marvel Comics. But before we get into that, smash like, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell, and leave us a comment. We've got a great community here, and it's all thanks to you guys. Thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. Prologue to this one takes place before the destruction of Asgard, when Loki smuggled a documentary crew into the realm of the Norse pantheon. Roger Red Norvell was part of that crew who filmed Asgard, and when he saw Sif, he was smitten by her. He made advances, but was rebuffed. Red handled the rejection poorly, convinced he could not compete with Sif's lover, Thor. Loki offered Red power equal to Thor, and Red accepted, neither of them realizing they were actually fulfilling the plan of Odin. Sometime before that, Odin had placed a copy of Thor's essence in Thor's iron gloves, belt of strength, and the fires of Gerodur, so that he could empower another were Asgard ever threatened in Thor's absence. More recently, Odin had learned that Loki and Hela were trying to trigger the cataclysmic event known as Ragnarok, which, according to prophecy, would bring about the death of Thor. Odin's plot was to create another Thor to die in his son's place. Red donned the belt and gloves and entered the fire, and he emerged transformed into Thor's equal, but mad with power. Red challenged and defeated the true Thor, and when Thor refused to yield, Red fired a lethal energy bolt. Joey, the documentary crew's sound engineer, leapt in between them, and it was Joey that was killed. Partially regaining his senses, Red told Sif he would spare the life of Thor if she left with him. So they traveled to Alfheim, where the kidnapped Sif gradually talked Red back to sanity. Realizing he would never win her heart, Red returned to Asgard to try to make amends. And while there, when the cameras were not rolling and the crew had left, Roger Norvell was killed by the colossal creature known as the Midgard serpent. And then we get to the main plot of today's game session. The headless body of Darkseid is transported to Groom Lake, Nevada, to the secret facility known as Area 51. Here, a scientist named Emil Hamilton begins to study Darkseid's remains. Also here, in their specialized morgue, is the body of the second Super Skrull, the one who had the powers of the Avengers rather than the Fantastic Four. His blood has been removed, and the scientists from Operation Paperclip have already began experimenting with blood transfusions to try to create soldiers with the powers of the Avengers. But so far, the Skrull's blood just kills them. The Super Skrull's gear is also here, like a replica of Captain America's shield and a replica of Thor's hammer. In another room, another one of the red supermen enter and takes his seat. They all used to be one guy, but at the end of World War II, there was a mishap with a duplicator ray, and now there's a ton of him. While they started with the same personality, their different experiences in separate lives have caused them to all be unique now. with diversity of personality. One of them asks why they have been asked to come here, while another says the world just saw one of them on TV end the life of Darkseid with Thor's hammer. So this is probably damage control. Some guards open the door, and Richard Nixon walks in with his security detail. Nixon tells the guards he doesn't need their help and that they couldn't stop the Red Supermen if they wanted to. One of the men says it's procedure, and Nixon blows him off, then chooses to ignore the guards. Nixon starts the meeting by thanking the Red Supermen, saying that everyone else tried to take down Darkseid and failed. And if not for the Reds, the planet Earth would be up the creek without a paddle right about now. He asks which one landed the final blow, and they tell him that that one calls himself the Red King, and he's in exile, so he's not here. Nixon paces around and says, I see. Then he explains that in that moment, Earth and Apocalypse were at war, and the normal rules go out the window when war is involved. He says that ending the life of Darkseid was the right thing to do, but the quote-unquote peaceniks will never get that through their thick skulls. So now it's time for the spin doctors to do their thing. And that, unfortunately, is a public relations nightmare right now. Henry Peter Gyrick has one of the Reds assume the identity of Roger Norvell, who the general public has no idea died in Asgard after the film crew left. Speaking of film, Norvell rarely appeared on camera, so most people don't know what he even looks like. And when he was on camera, black and white film was out of focus, etc. Henry Peter Gyrick orders the new Red Norvell to take Thor's place on the Avengers team. Nixon says the Avengers have a bunch of criminals on their team who the public now accepts as heroes. Characters like the Black Widow, Hawkeye, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, the Swordsman, and the Vision, who all began as villains, then seemed more heroic as time went on. Nixon says the world needs to think that the Red with the hammer is one of them. So if they can research Roger Norvell and find out that he was a human with an apartment, etc., it is going to start putting people's minds at ease. So they give this Red the copy of Thor's hammer that the Super Skrull used. And with that, Nixon, Henry Peter Gyrick, and the new Thor fly to New York, where they go to the Avengers mansion. Here, the Avengers are rebuilding the building. Nixon makes a joke that they could use a carpenter, then says he knows a guy with a hammer. Hawkeye yells at Nixon, saying that the real Thor's body isn't even cold yet, and already they're trying to shove this new guy down the throats of the Avengers. Gyrick tells Captain America that this is not a request, it's an order. So Captain America, being a military man, salutes and says, "Sir, yes, sir." But Hawkeye says this sort of thing makes him want to puke. Nixon reminds Hawkeye that he used to be a villain. Then he gestures at the assembled heroes and says, "Half of you weirdos were supervillains. So don't you flap your gums at me about your supposed moral high ground. This man saved the planet while you were off traipsing about in Valhalla or whatever." Captain America hangs his head, bothered that when Earth needed the Avengers most, they weren't there. So Steve Rogers starts to say he's sorry that they weren't here, but that their teammate, Thor, had just lost his life. But Nixon and Gyrick are done here. They say the team is down a member, and just like football, when one of your teammates falls, you put another man in the game. So the government bigwigs leave, and Black Widow, who was married to one of the Red Supermen and who intimately knows the one who actually took out Darkseid, thanks this Red to see if he admits that it wasn't really him who did that. The Red Thor instead says he's sorry for their loss and adds that it sucks that the government is treating their colleague like he's replaceable. The Vision is more robotic and often misses the subtlety of social interactions. So he shakes hands with this new Thor and says it's nice to meet him. He offers a creepy smile like some of those uncanny valley robots online do. Hawkeye tells Vision he needs to work on that. So Vision apologizes. Captain America shakes hands with Red and tells the others that he knew the Reds back in World War II. Ant-Man asks if they were killers then, too. Captain America says they were soldiers, and almost all of the soldiers in World War II were forced to take a life, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. Meanwhile, speaking of soldiers, the forces of Advanced Idea Mechanics, better known as AIM, decide that now is the time to strike, while the world's defenses are still weak from the recent invasion from Apocalypse. So AIM tries to take over, and as a part of their plan, they send the Super Adaptoid to Avengers Mansion to try to destroy the Avengers. When the android gets there, it copies the power of the Avengers and starts to fight them. But it can't copy the abilities of the Vision because its powers don't work on gadgets. And technically, according to the rules of the game, Vision is considered a gadget. Using dex of 26, a strength of 50, and a body of 40, the Super Adaptoid punches Vision, seemingly destroying him. Whether Vision is gone for good or not, the Avengers were already upset about Thor. So now when it looks like Vision is gone too, they all really attack the Super Adaptoid, but they can't hit him because his dexterity is so high. And at the end of round 1, the Vision's body is currently at negative 24. Ant-Man/Giant Man uses his growth power and then tries to step on the Super Adaptoid but misses. Captain America throws his shield but misses. Black Knight swings his sword but misses. Black Widow shoots at Super Adaptoid but misses. Hawkeye shoots arrows but misses. Quicksilver throws a punch but misses. Scarlet Witch uses her mutant powers to try to make the Super Adaptoid break down, but she needs to get over his 40 APs of body, and she fails to do so. Swordsman swings his sword but misses. The Wasp shoots at Super Adaptoid but misses. The new Thor swings his new hammer and he misses. On Super Adaptoid's turn, he uses his super strength to open a fire hydrant and spray water at the Avengers. Then he uses Scarlet Witch's mutant powers to make the water freeze. So from the neck down, most of the Avengers are covered in ice, holding them in place. But because Ant-Man/Giant Man used growth, he's too big for that to work. He checks on his wife, the Wasp, to see if she's all right. Captain America rolls his strength versus the body of the ice, and he makes his roll and breaks free. Black Knight rolls his strength versus the body of the ice and fails his roll, so he fails to break free. Black Widow fails to break free. Hawkeye fails to break free. Quicksilver does break free. The Scarlet Witch uses her mutant powers to make her ice melt. Swordsman fails to break free, and the Wasp shrinks down and gets out and tells her husband that she's fine. The new Thor frees Black Widow. On Super Adaptoid's turn, he uses Scarlet Witch's powers to banish the piece of X-kryptonite that was inside of Red. It's been in there for years, like a piece of shrapnel. And now that it's gone, Red will soon lose the powers it gave him. The Avengers, who are free, attack the Super Adaptoid and fail to hit him. Finally, the new Red Thor hits the Super Adaptoid with his Skrull hammer, and the Super Adaptoid is destroyed. The other Avengers are freed from their icy prisons, and some of them start to warm up to Red Thor. No pun intended. So that brings us to the epilogue. Black Widow makes a phone call to Mexico requesting transportation, and the mutant known as Spiral teleports to where she is and retrieves her. Black Widow is still a spy. She just doesn't work for the USSR anymore. These days, she reports to the Red King. She tells him that one of his quote-unquote brothers has been assigned to the Avengers as Thor's replacement. The Red King instantly understands that this is the government's way of calming people down from their hysteria after they saw the Red King on national television turning Darkseid's head into gravel. So he says this new Red Thor benefits him, it would seem, and he has the Hellfire Club's government contacts know that it would also benefit him to receive a pardon. So as part of this ongoing public relations campaign, Nixon pardons all of the the Red Supermen, of any crime that any of them may have committed, as a thank you from the people of Earth for saving the planet. Of course, many people don't like that, and Nixon's approval ratings begin to sink because of it. There's obviously a lot more I could say about the Nixon years, but those are probably stories for another day. I enjoyed this adventure. Hopefully you did too. If so, as always, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, ring the bell for notifications, and be sure to leave us a comment. From all of us here at the longest running superhero role-playing game on Earth, we hope you guys have a good one, and we will see you in the next adventure. Bye.